There is one name in the Quran that scholars rarely teach in full, not because it's unclear, because the complete story is deeply uncomfortable. This entity was worshipped across 6 civilizations for over 3,000 years. Prophets were sent to confront it. Nations were condemned for choosing it over Allah, and the ruins of its greatest temple still stand today. So why does almost no one know the full story? That changes right now. The name is Baal. In ancient Semitic languages, it didn't start as a name at all. It was a title. It meant Lord. These are the attributes of Allah, and someone gave them to a statue. That theft of divine language is where Baal worship begins, not with a temple, not with a ritual, with a word. Among the Canaanites and Phoenicians, Baal became the storm god, the one believed to control rain, crops, and survival itself. In a world with no stored food supply, no irrigation, no forecast, rainfall was everything. So when Baal's priests said he controls the storm, entire civilizations listened, not out of ignorance, out of fear. Baal wasn't just a belief, he was a system, rituals, offerings, obedience, all engineered to keep people dependent on something that was never real. But here's what most people don't realize. Baal didn't stay in one place, he didn't keep one face. Every culture that encountered Baal did the same thing. They didn't reject him. They renamed him. In Ekron, Baal Zebub. Among the Moabites, Baal Peor. In Tyre, Baal Melkart. In Carthage, the most powerful empire in the Western Mediterranean, Baal Hamon. Same entity, different masks. Then, in 1928, a farmer in Syria struck something buried beneath his field. The lost city of Ugarit, thousands of clay tablets, a script no one had ever seen, and buried within them, a complete theological record of Baal worship, written by his own followers. The texts described Baal as a god who died and returned. Every year he descended into the underworld, and the earth went dry. When he returned, the rains came back. That belief system wasn't just religious, it was a form of control. The moment people believe survival depends on obedience to something other than Allah, they will do anything to maintain it, and eventually they did. Carthage was not a small civilization. At its peak, it was a naval superpower. Cities across North Africa, Sicily, Spain, all under its control. And at the center of all of it was Baal Hamon. For decades, historians dismissed what the Romans wrote about Carthage. They called it propaganda, enemy slander. Across multiple Carthaginian sites, the archaeologists uncovered designated burial areas distinct from ordinary cemeteries. Stone monuments marked each one, inscribed with the same dedication, repeated over and over, "To the Lord Baal Hamon, because he heard my voice and blessed me." These were not accidents, not epidemics. These were offerings, deliberate, organized, generational, and the elite families of Carthage, the most powerful, the most wealthy, were the ones who participated most. Carthage was destroyed in 146 BCE. Rome absorbed its territory, its trade routes, its culture. And quietly, the worship continued, just under a different name called Saturn. Baal didn't die when Carthage burned. He just changed his name again. And if history has shown us anything, he has never stopped looking for people in positions of power willing to make that same contract. But we'll come back to that. The gateway through which worshippers entered the temple of Baal, reconstructed in marble, carried into the centers of global power. Documented fact. Make of it what you will. While Carthage was still centuries away from its peak, the confrontation had already happened. In the northern kingdom of Israel, around 875 BCE, a king named Ahab made one decision that changed everything. He married Jezebel. Jezebel was the daughter of the king of Sidon. a Phoenician city where Baal was not just worshipped but institutionalized. Her father's name literally meant man of Baal. She didn't arrive in Israel as a guest. She arrived as a mission within years, a grand temple to Baal in Samaria, 450 priests funded by the royal treasury, the prophets of Allah hunted down and killed. This was not gradual corruption. This was a deliberate replacement, and the people accepted it, not because they forgot Allah, but because they compromised. They kept Allah in their hearts and gave Baal their obedience. That compromise is exactly what the Quran calls shirk, not always a golden statue, sometimes just a quiet redirection of trust into whatever seems to control the outcome. It was into this world that Allah sent Prophet Ilyas, peace be upon him. He had no army, no political backing, one message, and it made him the most wanted man in the kingdom. So he made a supplication. He asked Allah to withhold the rain, not as punishment, as proof. If Baal truly controlled the storm, let him produce a single cloud. For 3.5 years, the sky stayed empty. The kingdom starved. The priests performed every ritual they had. They called on Baal with everything. Nothing came. Baal had no power over the rain. He never did. But here's the most chilling part. Even after 3.5 years of proof, most of them still didn't turn back. Sound familiar? Baal hasn't been worshipped openly since the ancient world. But open worship was never really the point. The pattern was always the same. Find the center of power, embed within the culture, change the name, continue the function. Banks, governments, cultural bodies, not on the fringes, at the center. Every summer, 2,500 of the most powerful men on earth, heads of state, Supreme Court justices, CEOs, former presidents, gather at a private estate in Northern California called Bohemian Grove. The encampment opens each year with a ceremony. Robed figures, torches, an effigy burned at the foot of a 40-foot stone owl. It's called the cremation of care, performed annually since 1881. The club's own description, a ritual to make members carefree, to set aside conscience for the duration of the retreat. The owl's voice, for decades, was a recording of Walter Cronkite. The club acknowledges the ceremony. Footage exists. The only question is what it means that the people who run the world open their most important annual gathering by burning their conscience in front of a stone idol. And here is what makes this distinctly Islamic in its concern. These systems don't ask you to reject Allah. That would be too obvious, too easily refused. Instead, they ask for something smaller: your compliance, your silence in exchange for access. Your loyalty redirected gradually, structurally, toward whatever controls your income, your reputation, your security. That is not a modern invention. That is Baal Hamon in a different building. Not because the people are foolish, because the system they are embedded in has made Baal invisible. He isn't a golden statue anymore. He is the structure of their entire world. Consider this final detail. The temple complex at Baalbek, built on the original site of Baal worship in Lebanon, standing for over 2,000 years, came under direct threat in late 2024 when rockets landed within hundreds of feet of its columns during active conflict. UNESCO convened an emergency session, granted Baalbek enhanced protection. The international community mobilized to preserve the ruins of the temple built to Baal as heritage, not as a religious site. While almost no one mentioned what those stones were originally built for, and in 2026, with systems more powerful, more embedded, and more invisible than anything Jezebel built in Samaria, the warning has never been more precisely targeted. Prophet Ilyas was not sent to people who had abandoned Allah. He was sent to people who still believed, but had stopped acting like it. People who knew the truth, recited the truth, and then walked out of their homes every morning and organized their entire lives around something else. This specific story, these specific people, this specific compromise, which means the warning was never really about Baal the idol. It was about the moment a person knows who Allah is and quietly decides that something else is more reliable, more powerful, more able to actually deliver. That decision doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like shirk when it's happening. It feels realistic. And that feeling, that specific feeling, is exactly what 3,000 years of this system was designed to produce. So the question Prophet Ilyas asked his people on a hillside in ancient Israel, it was never answered, not by them, but the people it was aimed at. They went quiet. Do you call upon Baal and abandon the best of creators? Every generation gets asked it differently. Ours is no exception.